All right, so what I'm going to do today is we are starting a new series of assignments, and it's this kind of the still life series here. So what you're going to see, this stuff just went live on Friday. You should see a topic now called still life series. You can see on mine there's a lot more that's going to be added to it, but I'm kind of just adding the pieces in like week by week. I'm not going to overwhelm you with all of it at once. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with an introduction to still life. And basically, we're going to do a series of drawings this week involving the styrofoam forms. So in my classroom, I have a bin on the table on the side here, and it's filled with a bunch of forms. So they're just like styrofoam, and you can see there are different types of forms. So just remember that the big difference here, in case you're confused as to what a form is, okay, it's one of our elements. Form is basically a shape, but it's three-dimensional. Okay, so the easiest way to equate this is a circle is a shape and a sphere is a form. So we're looking at three-dimensional forms for this assignment. And the purpose of this as an introduction is to teach you guys how to accurately draw three-dimensionally and with proper value and shading. And so we're starting with kind of the most simple form of that, which are just these basic forms. Um, as we progress, you'll see here, if you look at mine, we're going to kind of progress to more and more difficult things. So then we're going to go to something simple like a pair of scissors. Then we're going to go, like in my classroom, I'm going to have more complex objects out, and you're going to choose like objects and do a still life. And then we're going to move into skulls. And those of you that are in my classroom, I've actually got real skulls that we will use as a reference to draw from. Those of you online, you'll just work from reference photos. Okay. And you'll see here, I put in the still life three forms part here, this is where all of the instructions are. And I did put a couple of reference images. So these reference images are for people that are working from home that don't have the forms at home. Those of you in class, you're going to be able to pick out your own forms and set up your own still life. Okay. So what I'm going to start with to introduce this is I'm actually going to just start with the slideshow here. So this slideshow is in here that you guys could look at this at any time. But I'm just going to include it in this video so that if you watch the video later, you'll just have all the content from it within there. And so far, so good on the video part. So basically, this is a three forms assignment, okay? And we're going to be looking at, so your still life for this assignment that you set up has to have a minimum of three forms in it. At least one of the forms has to be a rounded form. So that would be a sphere, a cone, or a cylinder. So it's got to include at least one of those. Just because the flat edge ones are a little bit easier. So I want you to have at least one that's a little bit more difficult in there. Okay. So I really clearly just laid out the steps here, and I'll kind of do a little bit of demoing on this. So in your kits, you should have this value scale worksheet. Now keep in mind, if you're here at school, I've got copies of everything. So if there's something you forgot or you're missing, I can refill that for you or get that for you. But you're going to start by using pencil to create simple value scales. And so what it's going to look like when you're done is something like this. So the top value scale, I just want you to make each square a separate value. Have one side be the dark side and then slowly make it lighter. Or vice versa, you could start light and then work your way darker. And then on the second value scale, I want you to do a blended one. And the blended one, you're going to use your blending stub to mix that together. And I'll do a quick demo of that today. Then what you're going to do for step two, so there's four drawings or four main steps to this. So the first drawing is just the value scale worksheet, pretty basic. The second drawing is you're going to do a series. You're going to take one of your white pieces of paper, divide it up into 6 sections, and you're going to try 6 different shading techniques. So I've just got some examples here that show some of the techniques, but I've got this. So these couple of slides here show some different ways you can shade. But I kind of have a main example that I'll show you guys here. So it's this example right here. So basically what you're going to do for this first part, so what's going to happen is today, you're probably going to finish the value scale because that doesn't take very long. And then a lot of you are going to be working on this today. So you can take your white piece of paper, divide it into 6. You can either use a ruler or just hand draw it. I don't really care as long as it's on there. And then what you could do is you could just label these sections out. So the first type of shading is called stippling. So stippling is just making a series of dots, and the more dots you make, the darker an area gets, okay? So you're just going to practice shading that way, and I'll demo this. Scumbling is basically like stippling, but you're using more of like longer marks or kind of like strokes, you could say, but it's that whole idea of you're just making a bunch of marks that they're a little bit longer lines than dots is kind of what it is. You can kind of think of it as like scribbling a little bit. Then we have basic shading. Basic shading is going to be, you're going to take your pencil and you're going to try to create the values, but you're not going to smudge it. You're not going to smear it. You're just going to try to shade the values as best as you can with your pencil alone. And then this one down here in the lower left would be blending. So that would be the most realistic, where you're going to shade it and then use your blending stub to blend in. Then we have two at the end. This one here is called cross-hatching. Cross-hatching is where you take angled lines and cross them over each other, or they could be vertical and horizontal. And the last one is just called hatching or linear, where you're just using lines in a single direction. So a few of these, like the hatching, the cross-hatching, the scumbling, and stippling, they could actually seem kind of like Zentangle. And when you're doing these ones, you could use either a pen or a pencil on those. But for sure, the shading and blended ones, you have to use a pencil because you can't do that with a pen. But these other ones you could choose. Okay. Also, for those of you doing this distance learning, if you want, like, any part of the assignment that you think could be done on Canvas, the digital drawing, and you prefer to draw digital, I'm okay if you do some of it digital and some of it by hand. That's up to you. Okay. This is just another example of a finished one here that turned out pretty good, but I want to see the 6 different shading styles. So that way you can practice and find different ways to make values. Okay, so then the third drawing, so that was drawing number 2. The third drawing is going to be, you're going to set up that still life, that set of 3, and you're going to choose your favorite shading style from that last exercise, and you're going to completely shade it in that style. Most people do shaded or blended for this, but if you wanted to do it with stippling or hatching or cross-hatching, you could totally do that. Okay, here's just another good finished example here. Okay, so that's drawing number 3. Drawing number 4 is we're going to do the same still life, but you're going to work in reverse. So we're going to do it on black paper with white charcoal. And this one, you're going to have to do blended for this. And this one's interesting because you have to think in reverse. So normally we're used to having that white surface and we create the darker values. What you're going to do for this is you start with the really dark surface and you actually have to create the highlights instead of the shadows. So what beginners do when they do like scratch board or they do something with a black surface, a lot of beginners actually make a reverse drawing where they still, because we're so used to drawing the shadows, they still do that, but then they're like reversing the highlights and the shadows, and you don't want to do that. So you have to think in reverse so that you're drawing in the lighter areas and leaving the darker areas dark. And we'll talk more about that when we get to it. Now, these 4 drawings, basically you're going to have all week to do it. So you have a whole week to do the 4 drawings. Some of you, I think, will probably get it done faster than that. Some of you, it might be just the right amount of time. Some of you might need a little bit more time. But that's basically your assignment this week, is to get all 4 of these drawings in. Okay? Another really good example. And the thing to pay attention to when we get to these is you want these drop shadows on here, these cast shadows as well. So you have to think about the surface. You might shade the surface a little bit. It's not going to just be the forms themselves. Okay? So this is kind of a summary of what you're going to turn in by Friday is I want these 4 things. And this is here in the slideshow, so you can go back and look at it. But I want the finished value scale, your drawing of 6, your full drawing with pencil with whatever shading technique you like from the second exercise. And then the last one is the white charcoal drawing. Okay. What I would prefer that you guys do is that you gather, like you finish all 4 of them and then just turn all 4 of them in together rather than turning them in one at a time. I would like you to kind of get all 4 of them done and turn them in together at once. And once again, they can be turned in person or digitally, depending on what your situation is. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop over here, and I'm just hoping that everything is still working. All right, perfect. So I've got my document camera up here. So I'm just going to kind of summarize what you guys are going to need. So those of you at home, and this would apply for those of you here as well, this is a summary of what you need. So you should have this value scale worksheet. So if you're at home or if you're here and you have your folder at your desk, like start pulling these things out because this is what you're going to need. So the value scale worksheet you're going to need. You're going to need 2 pieces of 9x12 white. So it's like the same size as the worksheet. And you just need 2 pieces of that. Okay, so make sure you have 2 pieces of that. And then you're going to need the 1 black sheet, which is the same size. So you're not going to use all of this today, but this is just a summary of what you're going to need for the assignment. That's your 4 pieces of paper that are going to get turned in. Okay, so here to summarize it. 2 white, 1 black, and the worksheet. That's what you guys are going to need. Okay. So what I'm going to do, and so those of you that are at school, if you're missing any of this stuff, I can get it for you. If you're working from home and let's say you don't have the worksheet for some reason, maybe I messed up and didn't put it in your kit or something, you could just draw out this value scale on another piece of paper. It wouldn't be a big deal, okay? In terms of tools that you're going to need, you might need your ruler. It's not going to be super necessary, but you might want to use it. You're going to need your white charcoal pencil when we get to that, but that won't be till later, like Thursday or Friday. For the pencil that you use, you want to use the softer of your two pencils. So if you look in your kit, you want the pencil that's labeled with a B, and you want the higher number. If you're here at school, you do have the option to like look through my pencils here and grab something softer. But I would say at least a 4B or better if you have that. You might only have a 2B, which would still be okay. If you're at school and you only have a 2B, let me know and I'll get you at least a 4B. But a 4, 5, or 6B, something like that would work really good for blending. You want to use softer pencils for that. You're going to need a blending stick, and I'll kind of show you that a little bit. Sandpaper for when you're blending. And you might need your pen if you're going to use that on like the stippling and the cross hatching. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to demo all the parts, but I'm not going to demo them all today. I'm going to demo the parts that are relevant to what you're doing. So today I'm going to demo the value scale, and then I'm going to show you step 2 with the different forms, okay? So what you're going to do here, let me grab my 5B. So what you're going to do for the value scale is you want like a B pencil, something softer. And the way you handle value, and I know I'm going to state this just as a very beginner way of saying it, but value with your pencil is really controlled through pressure, okay? So the harder you press, the darker it's going to be. The lighter you press, the lighter it's going to be. So you're going to start on this top value scale here. And what I would do is you could either start on the lightest or the darkest side. But if I go to the darkest side here, basically you want to fill in one of the squares on the ends as dark as you can by pressing as hard as you can with your pencil and making it as dark as you can. Now, the softer the pencil you're using, the darker this is going to be. So if yours doesn't look as dark as mine, it's just because it's not really that you're doing anything wrong. It's just your pencil isn't as soft as mine. I'm using a 5B for this demonstration. So that's what a 5B looks like. Then basically, you're going to try to lighten the pressure each time and try to make a progression that each square gets lighter, but you fill in the whole square. So this one here, I'm going to try to just fill it in as like a nice dark value, but it should be lighter than the last one that I did. So I'm going to try maybe something like that. I could even go maybe a little bit darker on this. Okay, and then the next one I'm going to go a little bit lighter still. And once again, it's just about controlling the pressure of your pencil and not pressing as hard each time. Now I'm going to go lighter on the next one. And then like really, really light on the last one, like almost white. Okay, so you can see that's that value scale there. Then on the blended scale, you're going to do the same thing, but you're going to actually blend with your blending stick. And so what you want to do is you'll notice I'll rotate my paper to a way that makes sense. So I'm left-handed. So to me, if I'm going to start here, this is the way that it makes sense to draw from. Now, when you're blending this value scale, a really common thing that people do is they like swipe left and right like this. And you don't want to do that because one swipe is going to put the same value all the way across. So to gradually take this value, you actually want to swipe vertically and go like this in this manner here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start really dark on this side. And then I'm going to notice that I'm doing like a vertical up and down stroke. And then as I move to the right, I'm just going to slowly lighten the pressure. And I'm going to keep moving in that direction while lightening up on the pressure. And you don't have to go all the way to the end. I'm just going to keep going lighter and lighter and lighter until I kind of fizzle out. And I might stop like right there. And then what you're going to do is you're going to use your blending stick. So I've got my blending stub here, right? Now, if you're at home and maybe you don't have one, all the kits should have one. But if you don't, some alternatives to a blending stick, there's a lot of things you can use. You could use your finger. You could use a Q-tip. You could use a paper towel. There's a lot of things you can use to blend. Now, I purposely picked a blending stick that was a little dirty. You can see I've got blue on this side. Somebody tried doing it with color pencil. This is why you have sandpaper. So the sandpaper in your kit is so that you can rub your blending stick on it and you can clean off the tip there. So I'm going to clean off the blue on this side so that I can use it because I don't want that blue showing up in my artwork, right? Or if it's just really dark, you know, like you've just done a lot of shading with it, you could do that. Okay. It's not going to look perfect. Like it might still be stained or whatever. Like I can still see hints of that blue, but it's clean enough now where that blue isn't really going to show through. So then I do the same motion with my blending stub. And you're going to do this. And if you use the soft lead, you're going to see like mine's blending really easily. And it's pushing through. And you just kind of slowly blend that out. And then you can take it all the way to the end, and the blending stub will kind of take in that little bit of area that you missed at the end. So then you just try to blend it that way. So that's pretty much the value scale. So you can see that's a very quick one. I just did it like right here on video, like super fast. Okay, so that's how you do that part. And then I'm just going to demo the step number 2, and then 3 and 4 I'll demo later in the week. Once I know people are done and getting to that point. So this one here, you want to start by just breaking this up into 6. So you could take a ruler. If you want to be really fancy and measure it out, you can, but you don't have to. You can just guess. You could just hand draw this too. It's just a way to split it up. But what I would do is this, just break it up like this. And let's go right here and right here. You can see mine isn't perfect here, right? I've just got it split into 6. And then what you could do is you could label these out if you wanted to. And I think I do have them. So if you're here in class, you'll see step number 2 on the whiteboard. I did label the different ones, and I have an example there. So if you need to label this later, but if you have this ready and you want to label it with me, you can. But let's label one stippling. Let's label another one scumbling. We'll label one shading. We'll label blended. And you want to kind of label it like down low because you want to have room to like to draw the object, obviously. And then we'll have cross hatching. Okay, cross hatching. And then we will have this one, the last one would be called hatching or linear. Whoops, hatching, or it could be called linear, either one. Okay, and I'm going to kind of demo and explain this here. So I'm glad that all my technology is still working as far as I can tell. That's good. So what I have here is I'm just going to pull up this little picture. So those of you that are here in class, when you get to this step here, you're actually going to come up to my box and pick a form, and you're just going to do one single form for this. Okay. Those of you that are at home, you can just pick one of these reference pictures on Google Classroom and just draw one of the forms. Probably like on this picture, I'm going to do the sphere because it's in front and I can see all of it, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw the sphere 6 different times. And when you guys are drawing a circle, I think I talked about this when we were doing the digital, but you couldn't really see. So when you draw a circle, a lot of people go like this and they try to draw it and they like move their wrist and try to draw it. But the best way to draw like a circle or an oval is to do like a circular motion, and you actually want to keep your wrist stiff and you want to move your arm. So what you would do is you would take like this is where you'd use like an H pencil or like a lighter pencil, and you just start with a basic sketch like this. So to draw a circle, I'm just going to go like this, and I'm going to keep circling. And you'll see if I keep circling, eventually I'll see like a nice circle there. So I'm just going to do that in each of these and just try to get a nice circle to start for my sphere. Okay, and I'm going to go here. And try to make them as big as you can so that they fit in the square, okay? So I've kind of got that to start. So now for stippling, so then what I could do is I could go back and then I could like darken the outline here so that I can see, okay? Now for stippling, you could use pencil or a pen for stippling, but basically you're just making a series of dots. So like if I'm looking at my sphere in the picture here, I can see the bottom right is the darker side and the top part here is the lighter side. So what I would do, and stippling does take a while, okay? It's like Zentangle where you really have to do it. So I'm not going to sit and do the whole thing. But actually what I'll do is rather than do the sphere, I'll just show you down here. But if I just do like a lot of dots, you'll see it's darker. And then if I start to make less dots, the value will just kind of slowly get lighter as I do less and less dots. So you can see I'll just do like a little mini value scale there. But you can kind of see how it gets darker and then it gets lighter based on the amount of dots. So you would just do that in the circular form. I'll show you the shading on the circle for one of the other ones. That's a little bit easier. Scumbling is basically like stippling, but you're doing more marks, right? So what I would do is, let's say I'm shading this out, I might just do like a bunch of like little lines and marks instead of like dots, but I'm still just creating a bunch of like little curved lines or something. You could kind of think of it as like fur, right? If I was just doing like a furry version of this, that's kind of like what scumbling is. I'm just kind of like really quick and expressive. And then it's just, I make more lines where it's darker, and I'm going to do less lines where it's lighter, is all you're going to do. So you can see it's just like a very quick, expressive motion to kind of just quickly try to show and identify that. And I might like try to define my edge here again, something like that, just really quick. Then we have basic shading. So this one here is you would try to shade it as best as you can with your pencil, but you're not going to do any smudging or smearing. So what I would do now is I would just take my pencil and I'm going to really define this dark edge here. And when you're thinking of rounded forms, you actually want like your pencil in the shading to kind of move in the direction of that form. So I'm kind of doing like rounded strokes here because I want to really try to define the shape of that form and the direction that it's moving. And then as we get near the top here, you can see it gets really light. And you can work back and forth. Like, let's say I put a little bit too much up there and I want it lighter. You can go back in with your eraser and you could lighten up an area as well if you need to. So I could say lighten that up a little bit more if I did a little bit too much. But that's just your basic shading. And then blending, same thing, except now after you're done shading, you're going to use your blending stub and try to make it really nice and smooth, right? So I probably don't even have to demo this because it's pretty much the same thing I just did. But we'll try. Now what I might do on this one is I might not shade it out as far. But then I could take this now and I could really smooth it out. And I do a lot of like rotating my paper to get like the right angles and things like that. So that's just a good thing to kind of get used to. And then what I can do now is just with my blending stub alone, with what I picked up, I can kind of pull the shading out on my own a little bit and kind of shade with just the blending stub, even in areas I didn't put pencil down. So you can see there I kind of blended that up a little bit, okay? So just trying to do that. Cross hatching, I'll go a little bit quicker because I know I've been talking for a while here. Cross hatching, I'll just demo down on the side, but basically it's just taking lines. I usually like doing diagonal lines for cross hatching, but you could do it either way. So what it is basically I might just make like a series of lines and then you just cross over them. And then the more you cross, the more lines you make, the darker it gets. So I could just keep adding more lines here and keep crossing over. This is another one that you could do with a pen. And then just regular hatching or linear, it would just be doing a series of like single lines. So like if I'm shading here, I might just do a bunch of horizontal lines like this. And I might just kind of make them come out a little bit to where it gets lighter. And then I could just have it like just create more lines where I want it darker. But you just go in one direction for linear or hatching. Okay. So these aren't like finished or perfect by any means, but I just wanted to do a quick demo and show you. This is an example of what it might look like finished, and I showed you some of those already. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording at this time. So let me hop back. So let me close this out. I've got a bunch of things open here. Close this out. I'm going to come back here